This Ridley-O is brought to you by LRN.FM. Feds don't want you to hear them.
Hello, everybody. This is Russell Canning. I'm with Dave Ridley, and this is podcast number 9 of the NHexit.
NHexit podcast number 9.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm looking at another screen that has all of them listed, so that way I actually know which one this is. So, we're making progress.
Yeah, that's a piece of progress that I guess is within our capability.
So, how's it going with you?
Oh, not too bad. I do have quite a bit of NHexit related news.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess the most interesting thing was the governor withdrawing the New Hampshire troops from Washington, D.C.
Oh, how and when did that happen?
Almost as soon as he sent them, he pulled them back. So apparently he didn't like the way they were being treated.
Well, that was, the first thing I saw when they were telling us there was a whole bunch of troops there and stuff like that, I saw a bunch of people sitting on the floor, their fancy marble floors in the U.S. Capitol, and they're laying around the floor trying to make themselves much comfortable. Like, what are they doing? It was the strangest thing. And then they were like 2 or 3 deep along the inauguration path. I also think it's funny seeing troops in camouflage in Washington, D.C. I don't get the point of that. I guess I'm not a military guy. I don't know why they wear camouflage all the time.
Well, it was their way of making the American election look more like the elections in Burundi or Rwanda.
Yeah, that was the reaction across all over the world, right? People thinking, "Wow, United States has lost it."
And it has.
Yeah, and then I saw that, and then the troop guys are sleeping in concrete garages and stuff like that. I thought when the military did stuff, they set up a temporary camp, right? They bring trucks, they bring generators, they have lights, they set up tents, all that kind of stuff.
So I guess things are things are so screwed up they can't even do fascism.
So what was the situation? They called up the National Guard and asked for people from each state?
Well, I don't know if that's exactly how it worked, but for one reason or another, New Hampshire did send some people. And like I said, they weren't down there for very long before the governor and other politicians started getting angry. It is kind of interesting how this seemed to happen all pretty fast. They were pretty quick to stand up for these National Guardsmen. Wish they were that way about standing up for the average person in New Hampshire. But it's good that they, if he's withdrawn troops from D.C., then, maybe someday he'll withdraw New Hampshire from D.C. It's a step along the same path.
Well, yeah, you're right. Thinking of it like you're paying attention to what your guys need. So who's in charge of the New Hampshire National Guard?
Well, as of 2016, I think maybe a little earlier, it was General Riddell. I can't remember his first name. I've met him twice, and he seems all right.
Huh. Yeah, I'm looking at their website. So they've got these different major generals and brigadier generals and stuff like that. And but yeah, who decides what they're doing? Because and then that the governor could tell, who does he contact to say, how about we bring our guys back since they don't seem to be needed and they're living in strange conditions?
Yeah. On the other hand, if you think about it, their National Guard, they're going down. You would expect that they weren't planned. You don't deploy to a hotel room normally, right? That's not really how you would expect your day. You would think that they'd have a bedroll and a sleeping bag and the ability to keep warm.
Haven't we seen them set up tents and there's all these closed parks around there and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's
And,
nothing
like,
else
I've
going.
done-
There's nothing else going on down there except fascism. You think they could do the military hut thing? You know, you think they'd be able to
Yeah.
get that part since that's the only thing apparently going on down there.
Well, remember, like, when they set up the tents in New York City or something? Like, you got the military there. They're setting up medical tents. And
Yeah.
the other thing, like, so one time during one of the hurricanes, I was in Florida bringing water. And so we sat in a parking lot next to SeaWorld in Orlando. And the military was in charge of that. The National Guard people. I think there was Florida state troop in one place and the other, and so they're the ones that have the equipment. They were bringing in food every day. We had truckloads of water and other stuff, and they had power and they had lights. You know what I mean? They just take over an area and make it a temporary, place that has one of everything. And that seems like also in Washington D.C. Also, to me, it felt like I'm watching a whole bunch of politicians and bureaucrats that make piles and piles of money. They're sitting comfortably at home, and then these military guys are like sitting on the curb in January. It's like, really, this makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they could have done better for them than they did, but like I said, I mean, just the idea that you would be like a National Guardsman, you would expect that they would be roughing it, part of the time, but it may not have been necessary for them to do so in this case. And I should clarify. I'm sure there's other things going on in Washington. I mean, I'm just saying it seems like that's the only thing going on is hut, military.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what it seemed like. When you watch the videos from them letting the Trump people in on the 6th, and then a few days later, then they act like, oh, we're locking everything down. Well, why weren't you locked down a few days earlier? Why? I don't even get it.
Well, okay, I think it's probably confusion in the chain of command, which we're going to miss soon.
So on the New Hampshire National Guard site, their timeline says that they have been in the same mode since 2001. More than half the soldiers and airmen of the New Hampshire Guard have been deployed overseas for the global war on terror. So if we're in our own country, I guess we can bring the National Guard guys back from Afghanistan and stuff like that and protect New Hampshire.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Ron Paul was always calling for bringing them back, and I was, I agree they do need to be brought back, but people forget how difficult that's going to be when they're brought back, how bad that's going to be for Americans to some extent, except for, the families of troops. And of course, the troops deserve to be able to come back, whether we benefit from their presence here or not. But I think we may find that we wish they were still in Iraq shooting things up instead of here.
Hey, if any of them come back and they want to do hut, well, we can send them, they could be mercenaries for black ops groups for Washington, D.C., and, because they get paid more money down there. New Hampshire will be too frugal.
Yeah.
Right? They'll be making more money working for the feds. So that happened, and he pulled them back, you said. So, like,
correct.
There's nobody that's with the New Hampshire National Guard that's down in D.C. right now.
I don't know, but I got the impression that he pulled them all back. And
Yeah.
there was other New Hampshire exit news that doesn't have anything to do with the New Hampshire National Guard. Did we talk about what happened to Jerry DeLamis's aunt?
Yes.
Okay, so that's already covered. But there's a bunch more stuff. Let's see. I've got to cue my keywords here. Okay. Okay, so there's a bill at the State House, the Nullification Bill. So it would nullify the U.S. Supreme Court. It would overrule. It would be a local bill that would basically overrule the U.S. Supreme Court.
In what way?
On the issue of no-knock raids.
Oh, that the Supreme Court has said no-knock raids are okay, but they're wanting to make it more specific what's allowed? Is that what's...
I don't know exactly. No, I don't know exactly. I don't know the details. I just know that over at 10thamendmentcenter.com, they said, quote, a bill introduced in the New Hampshire House would prohibit no-knock warrants and take a step toward nullifying several Supreme Court opinions in practice and effect, unquote. Okay, so maybe it would just be a step toward nullifying the Supreme Court as opposed to full-blown one-shot nullification.
Yeah, but anything seems like, any just talking about that maybe the feds had done something wrong and maybe we shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Of course,
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's hacking at the branches rather than striking at the root, because, we're not going to get the whole country excitedly talking about this bill, right? I mean, 10th Amendment Center's talking about it, but no, the country's not. What they would talk about excitedly on all the network channels would be a resolution in favor of withdrawal from the union, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that were to pass, it wouldn't be binding, but if that were to pass, just expressing the legislature's desire to see that move forward, the details can be start to work on them later. Something like that is much more useful and powerful because it strikes at the root and gets everyone talking. But no, everyone just insists on doing this obscure, one tiny step at a time that probably doesn't get taken anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess they can do that, and then, with us, we'll keep pushing the most extreme part, right? That's the thing, is you can tell the system really fears the idea of us splitting, because then you're like, then they lose all of it, right? They lose the money, they lose control of people. They don't. That's
I think I think the United States, the federal government would probably cease to exist if one state seceded. It would lead to, you would think it would lead to all 50 states coming out.
Well, we can tell them it'll be okay.
Union,
mean, nobody ever thought the British Empire would shrink, but it shrunk. But they're still living good. It didn't all fall apart for them, right?
Yeah, they would have been living really good. I'm sorry, go ahead.
We'll even try to pay attention to their inaugurations and pretend we care. Right?
The other thing is,
I love watching Canadians say, "Okay, I'm kind of tired of American politics already."
Yeah,
that could be us.
But yeah, it occurred to me recently that one of the bargaining chips that New Hampshire could hold out, and all the states could hold out against the federal government. One of the carrots that they could place in front of the federal government is that like if this goes smoothly for us and you don't give us too much trouble, maybe we go ahead and join NATO. Maybe we can all join NATO and maintain basically the worldwide deterrent that exists currently without all this internal interference inside the states.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I kind of philosophically prefer the idea of a neutral, independent New Hampshire that is like Switzerland. That's what I would prefer. But, it's something that I could give up in exchange for a smooth transition. If you have a concern about international security and fighting China or whatnot, or deterring China, then that's one solution. That we get our secession, but we also have deterrence against China because everyone's still in NATO. And I think most of the states would probably join NATO.
Yeah, I would think that if the next step, I could see that.
I've always, again, I don't, I'm just one person, but for me, I've always had a lot more positive and continually positive feelings toward NATO than toward the United States. I mean, the number of NATO atrocities is pretty small, and their interference in internal politics of countries is very limited compared to what the United States does.
Yeah, if we were a small member of something like that, that would be a very different situation than we are in right now.
Yeah,
right?
Think how positive most of us feel toward Greece and toward France and toward England and Germany, and Italy, and we almost all have positive feelings toward all those places. And we have positive feelings to a large extent to the other states. I mean, yeah, we complain about California, we complain about Massachusetts, but by and large, Americans kind of like Kansas. They appreciate Colorado. They'd love to visit Washington. They're not against Washington. And there's just a positive feeling towards all these different institutions for the most part. There's just not a positive feeling towards DC and some of the states that are super supportive of DC.
Well, yeah, and why if we were to split and others were to split, why wouldn't we be interacting with the rest of the U.S. the way Canada does? I don't know why they wouldn't treat us the same and we wouldn't treat them about the same.
Yeah, and of course, if you look inside Canada, the provinces are drifting further and further apart every year, practically, and yet they're actually very close in a sense. They're further apart in the sense that the country is decentralizing, but there's really not much animosity between provinces.
Yeah, well, even if they were to split, they're not going to war with the other people. They just will have different priorities.
Yeah, it's like it never even came up when Quebec tried to pull out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that wouldn't be some disaster. Did you read the article from Mises? The Chinese won't invade America if secessionists succeed.
Oh, that's a great idea for an article, but I have to read that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you'll see it. My current situation is I am madly posting everywhere but Facebook.
Yeah.
The day after I did my NHexit thing in New Hampshire, on the 7th, I lost Facebook. I can see everything on Facebook, but I can't post. So I got new friends from that meeting, but I haven't been able to interact with them. But so I'm just seeing what you're posting on Facebook, but I've been posting these things all over everywhere else. So you can find them at MeWe, Gab, other, the nhexit.org website, that sort of stuff.
So so maybe if you want, maybe I can post that stuff on Facebook for you if you email it to me. I might see it on Gab. I don't know how to find you on Gab necessarily, and I don't use Gab that much.
Yeah, well, it's whatever. So maybe what I'll need to do is until then I'll send it to you.
I guess we're stuck with that for now. It would be better if I could just. It would be better if I could just pull it off of a feed or something. You know what you could do is if you could post it off.
If you go to nhexit.org, I can put them there.
Yeah, just put it there. I'll see it there, and then I can repost from NHexit to Facebook.
Well, and I'm grabbing things from Facebook and wherever else and just making piles of links of all the stuff I like.
Yeah.
So this guy did a good job of analyzing, with the Chinese takeover. And one of his things he's mentioning is how we would be getting along with the other states. And it's not like we'd all, we're suddenly at war now. And
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and he's saying, have we been at war with Canada all this time? I mean, since 1812, all the different parts of England or Great Britain, we haven't been at war with them. I don't know why that would change any. And then he goes through and shows how we're so much more economically powerful that if you split the United States into red states and blue states, they both would have a bigger military than the Chinese.
For the moment,
if they were spending the way they are right now.
Yeah, for the moment, but the Chinese economy is continuing to grow, and it will be able to support a much larger military. And they do have.
Well, we'll see if they're too authoritarian, they can only grow so much. It becomes fake.
Yeah, I think.
Remember how big you remember how big and powerful we thought Russia was?
Yeah, their military is only 12% the size of the American military last I checked.
Yeah, so that's what he was showing is if we were split, 50-50, it's not like they'd come and take us over. We'd still be more powerful than a lot of countries. Well,
yeah, we might be more resilient against the Chinese as 50 separate states part of NATO than we currently are. Because if you think about it, the Romans were only able to conquer I guess it was Gaul at the time under Vercingetorix because it was under Vercingetorix, right? When the tribes were not united, they were unconquerable. And then as soon as they united, Rome crushed them. It was the same problem in Ireland. As soon as they united, they got crushed. And I like to say, divided we stand, united we fall. Or united we stand, divided we rise.
Well, that's the thing is, a lot of people act like the only reason we're not being taken over is because we're part of the United States. But these people that live in other countries that are not the United States are not just about to be invaded. I don't get why they think that. Are there people sitting in Canada quaking in fear because they wish they could join the United States so they won't get attacked?
Well, they've joined the United States in an alliance, but they're still nervous about China, and there is a real risk.
I'm thinking
there.
The average person on the street. I mean, when we talk about secession, people act like we will be months away from speaking Chinese. But people in Canada at this moment are not worried about that the Chinese are going to be rolling into Vancouver.
Oh, believe me, I speak Chinese, and you're all years away from speaking it, even if you start today.
Even if you tried.
And I don't speak it very well. I've been learning off and on for 5 years, and I only have a 500-word vocabulary. It's very difficult. But anyway, anyway, what were you saying?
Well, it's just the basic idea of why would we if we became separate succumb to them? I just keep running into this, and then I keep thinking of more reasons why it won't happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these ways to even if we were on our own with just 1.5 million people in New Hampshire, there are just dozens of things we could do easily, mostly by just reducing government involvement. That would make the state uninvadable, unconquerable, just like Switzerland was unconquerable, even in the most dire of circumstances, when she was completely surrounded and landlocked by German allies and Germany. The Germans just wouldn't do it because the defense was too decentralized. That was the main thing.
Well, and also if we were to have just split from the U.S., would we look like an easy target and an easy thing to take over and rule?
No, the geographical situation is almost perfect for independence.
Yeah, and why would a place like China think, oh, well, we could take over New Hampshire and then they'll start working for us? No, we won't. We won't go along with it.
Well, we're in more danger. We're in more danger of Chinese influence as part of the federal system.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't know exactly what's going on in Washington, but it's clear that the Chinese were making a play for influence on the Biden family, right? So they did some of this with the Bushes too, but we don't know how compromised the Biden administration is. We do know it seems to be more friendly toward China than the Trump administration was. And it's already taken pro-China actions, not all of which are necessarily wrong, but it's definitely, I can certainly see a situation where the federal government teams up with China against local people inside the United States, right? That is not a far-fetched possibility.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I have found another a source of income we can work on. Have you heard about this? Since some of us libertarians are also considered terrorists by the United States government now, we might get arms and funding from the CIA now, like ISIS.
Oh, who knows? Anything bad is possible, I guess.
So then we'll be able to tap into all kinds of money. Some of that sweet U.S. money that gets spread around. Have you heard anything along those lines?
No, and no money has, strangely enough, no money has appeared in my bank account from any of these.
Yeah, I know. See, that way we can move up from being funded by imaginary funding from the Koch brothers. We can get that CIA counterinsurgents money. That's what we need.
Yeah.
No, in the meantime, we will be a plucky band of poor people going against the biggest empire in the world. In the meantime, I I have other articles that you probably haven't read that you've run. What else have you run into in the last week?
Well, here in Winchester, there is a sort of unintentional exit activity going on at a preschool. There is one of the preschools, I guess, or the organizers or parents or something at one of the preschools. They're organizing a peace project, which, if they stopped and thought about it, there's no peace projects unless we're out of the union and there's no peace.
Mm-hmm.
If we're part of the federal government, then there's going to be, and then we're part of, 7 different wars that the feds started around the country. That's what you're
Yeah.
part of if you're in New Hampshire that is part of the union. But anyway, they're going to be painting peace signs on rocks and spreading them around the town. So I consider that to be, unintentionally pro-independence.
Yeah. Well, like you're saying, if you're part of it, it's automatic. Our National Guards, half of them are doing, Middle Eastern stuff, and there's all this stuff that's happened. What prompted it, do you think? I thought we were supposed to be scared to death of global warming and COVID.
Yeah, it's interesting that someone has remembered that war is actually probably, it is killing a lot of people too. But the person posting about it on Facebook said, quote, "Preschool Peace Project. I would love for the Winchester Preschool to do something to promote peace and wellness in the community. I will put a box outside of the school building's main entrance. I would love to have the preschoolers, their family, and friends to fill that bucket with peace rocks. I will then randomly spread them all over our town," unquote.
And if they spread things, peace rocks around, they will be covered by Ridley Report.
Oh, I guess they would. Yeah,
because they'd be available for you to find.
Yeah, it wouldn't be very hard for me to find. I'd probably see them without meaning to even.
You could interview little kids. What their peace rock means.
I could, yeah. Let's see. And there was another item. Let's see. This is a pretty minor grievance as grievances go. But I bet we will find more grievances as this situation unfolds or we learn more about it. So there was an article in Reuters. The feds apparently arrested a guy, let's see, in Concord, or at least they charged him in Concord for allegedly making threats against members of Congress. And what was interesting, the article it's in much detail and it doesn't really say that much about what the feds did. So I think if we knew more about what the feds did here, we'd find some sources of concern. But
yeah, so
really,
you're saying, these are federal charges against a guy.
Yeah, but you know how it is when the feds charge an individual. There's always all this stuff they do as part of their process that is disturbing, right? Even if they're going after a bad guy. So there was probably all, the people who went into this building were not allowed to film for example, this court hearing was, censored. Essentially, no one could film it. And that's the way it is with all federal court hearings that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And there was probably a lot of restrictions placed on people to go in the building. I think they might be requiring ID now to walk in and just exercise your right to view a court hearing. The article was also disturbing. I would have liked to have thought that Reuters would. I mean, it's just a very preliminary article. But here are some quotes from it that bothered me. So, quote, "Earlier this week, Vinegar was charged, or Weiniger, I don't know how to say it. Weiniger was charged with leaving threats on the voicemail of 6 unidentified members of Congress," unquote. So, first of all, why aren't these congressmen and women identified? This is a public matter. We should know who was allegedly threatened.
Yeah. I mean, why would I even believe any of this is happening? I mean, it's just
Right.
like,
The other thing is, okay, so they said, quote, they included racist, homophobic, and anti-Semitic taunts, unquote. However, nowhere in the article is anything he said even quoted.
yeah,
So, like when they arrested Chris Cantwell, who was like a sort of a quasi-Nazi in Keene, they we learned the exact words that he had said or allegedly said in a Twitter or something, a tweet or a post or something like that, something on the internet, right? So we have the exact sentence, right, and that to work with. Now, maybe later on someone will post that, or someone will write an article about that. But the other thing that's disturbing about the article, what did it say? Where's the headline? The headline was quote, search finds AR-15 rifle, armored vest in home of man who threatened members of Congress, unquote. That's what Reuters said. So how does Reuters know that he threatened members of Congress? He's only just now been charged. That is an
yeah,
alleged threat. It is not a threat until it's proven to be a threat.
yeah, and it's almost, yeah, like you're saying, the reporting isn't from like the outside. It's like it doesn't make any sense. You'd think the thing would be federal authorities are looking into a matter, but yeah, they have strange details that don't make any sense.
Yeah. So part of the problem may just be maybe they put the article out really quickly and it was just the first, they were posting this article just within the first, 6 hours after the arrest, and maybe later on they posted more details or so forth. But the main problem here is not the lack of details, but the fact that they just spewed this piece of info. They spewed this charge as though it were already proven fact.
Mm-hmm. And it fits with their big thing the last 2 weeks, that there's horrible people threatening Congress people. Right? It fits their narrative of the week.
Yeah. Something else too. This is weird here. Okay. So I guess this article was posted after the January 6th events in the Capitol, the Imperial Capitol. So the U.S. Attorney Charles Rombo said, quote, his taunts took on a very different and real meaning in light of the actions last week, unquote.
Yeah.
So he wrote these alleged taunts. He allegedly wrote them before January 6th. And so Rombo is basically saying, well, because some bad things happened later on, we're just going to blame him for the bad things that happened that he may not have had any knowledge of. But, all these things that are, kind of disconnected from him are being held against him.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of
exactly.
disconnected. I mean, it's just they're arguably disconnected, I guess. They could.
And like you're saying, what's the proof? I mean, did he actually do it? Did somebody else frame him? I mean, it's like just a lack of details. Like, just okay, here this guy did this, and in light of this other stuff, it's really disturbing. Oh my.
Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to be responsible for our own actions. We're not supposed to be responsible for, at least.
Well, right now they're acting like from the 6th, all of us are under suspicion. All of us are a problem.
Yeah, we were already under suspicion.
Well, but that's the narrative, right? That's the thing, is they're acting like we have real problems and we have to stop these people. And, what does that have to do with me? Or, even if somebody did something somewhere else, what does that have to do with me? They weren't our official representatives. We didn't send them.
Well, I always like to say, we're each responsible for our own actions, but none of us is responsible for the actions of our enemies. So you and I are the enemies. We're the enemies of the Trump government when it was in power. I know I was probably the first New Hampshireite ever kicked out of a Trump rally, and we hated what he was doing. they were our enemies. Now the Biden people are our enemies too.
Yeah.
And we're not responsible for the actions of any of these people unless
Yeah.
we sent them money or something.
Yeah.
We are, when we don't, no one sends money to their enemies except for taxpayers.
Yeah. Yeah. That somehow, yeah, because you're talking about pro-Trump stuff. What does that have to do with millions of us?
Yeah,
We
and
weren't
that they're
pro-Trump.
taking it out. They're taking it out on everybody. It's collective punishment. Even these liberals who like Biden are being harmed by the restrictions that are being imposed. They didn't benefit from having all those troops there and from having to submit to additional security protocols and pat downs, probably, and all the different things that they do to treat everyone as guilty until proven innocent.
Mm-hmm. And like you're saying, in this one person's case, it somehow ramped it up that somebody else did something somewhere else.
Yeah, but of course, in this case, it wasn't his enemies that did it. It was his allies that did it. So that does make him, it makes his case harder.
But we don't even know that kind of stuff. I mean, we don't know what happened, who this guy is, what happened,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I don't.
Yeah,
they
didn't even say what he said. They just said it was homophobic. Well, how do I know it's homophobic until I read it?
I know. Well, also right now on a campus, if I'm a white man and walk on a campus, they say I'm homophobic for walking down the street.
They do?
Well, I mean, that's the category. You're a white man. You are misogynist. You're all these problems. You haven't even done anything.
Yeah.
You're just walking down the street. They could take.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what they. It's endless. We're being attacked for nothing. So, yeah, there's just so many reasons. It just piles and piles and piles. All the reasons to not be connected with the federal government. It just kind of hits you. All the stuff they're doing right now. I don't want to be a part of any of this stuff. I don't like anything that I'm hearing about the Biden administration. I don't like any of this stuff.
Actually, some of it's not too bad. I mean, obviously, it's going to be mostly authoritarian, but there were a couple of things I saw that were positive. At least in principle, they were positive. So I guess they're doing some immediate loosening on immigrants, which is good. And it's good for the immigrants who have human rights, and those should start being respected. I'm glad that's going to happen. But of course, the reason why the Democrats are doing it is so that they can gain votes, create voters, and ultimately they're going to probably turn this positive thing into something negative.
Do we need to put a big clock on our web on nhexit.org telling when we're going to secede and giving people time to sort themselves out to the location they want to be in when thing we need to have a big clock that has like 4 years in the future or something like that, and you'll have start making your plans.
But it wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I would give it a 15% chance of happening within the next 4 years.
Yeah,
because again, we've had our Sarajevo Holiday Inn moment now. I was kind of waiting to see when and if that was going to happen. And to some extent, I would say the events in D.C. were pretty similar to the Sarajevo Holiday Inn incident in 1992, especially when combined with other similar incidents in the United States. That was an incident where, anyway, I won't go into too much detail, but anyway, that incident, changed a lot of people's minds, I think, in Bosnia as to whether they should be seceding from Yugoslavia or not. When the pro-Yugoslavia faction just opened fire on a crowd from the top of the Sarajevo Holiday Inn. It was actually an event that was somewhat similar to the DC event. It was there was a crowd of people who were against the leader who was staying in the hotel. And they gathered there, and he claimed that he was the Bosnian Serb leader, and he claimed that he was nervous for his safety, and his bodyguards allegedly opened fire on the crowd for that reason. But you could make the claim that some of the same things happen in DC. I mean, they did open fire to some extent on the crowd. They didn't fire indiscriminately. But we had 4 dead. I think in Sarajevo the death toll was a lot higher. It was probably in the dozens from that incident in '92. But those kinds of incidents create situations where independents can follow very quickly thereafter.
Yeah, because people are already thinking, from what people are thinking, right?
Yeah, and most people in Bosnia were against independence. I think right up until the end, and that was the problem, is that they were the last. They were the third republic to leave Yugoslavia, and because they were so late leaving, that's one of the reasons why there was so much violence. When Slovenia got out fast, they had a few dozen deaths. Croatia got out almost as fast, and they had 10,000 deaths. Bosnia got out third and had 200,000 deaths.
Hmm. Yeah, and then what's happening right now is so tame. And then what will be the next step?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a lot worse. But for a body count, a 4-person body count is pretty significant by U.S. standards. I mean, there's a whole Neil Young song, right, written around 4 people being shot by the federal government.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. My reaction was there's a whole lot of stuff and a whole lot of things going on and this and that. I drive past accidents on the freeway that have more casualties than that.
Yeah. But again, it's political violence. It's not normal for political violence to result in deaths in the United States. That's a 1960s thing, or something worse than further back than the 1960s.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, like I said, independence is just one of those things that it's kind of like climate change. It doesn't actually happen all that gradually. It happens overnight. Like if you think about the end of the last ice age, it basically happened overnight. It was just like one day there was this giant flood. No one knows exactly what caused it. It was either some ice dam breaking or a solar flare or something, but it was just like instant, right? And it at least that's what they think happened. And when the Younger Dryas period started, 1,000 years before that, it was probably also instant. It was probably a comet hitting the northern ice sheet, and just one day, 90% of the population was wiped out, and probably that's how it unfolded. And it's the same thing with secession in history. It doesn't move smoothly. It moves in fits and starts.
Yeah.
So you'll go for a long time with people just getting used to the way things are, and then one day it just changes overnight.
Yeah, that's what I would expect. I mean, it's kind of it snowballs suddenly at the end.
Yeah, and it's many aspects of this are not to be welcomed, and secession. I mean, that's one of the bad things about secession is it actually cannot happen usually in normal times, which you want times to stay normal. You don't want craziness to happen, but when it does, secession can be a release valve, a thing that mitigates the harm.
Mm-hmm. And don't you think most people are looking at it that way right now? That this
I
is a
hope
way to have
so. I
things
guess
be where we don't have to fight each other so much.
that's the way I look at it. But the numbers of people that support secession is not massive. It's 25% of Americans now. I guess there was a recent poll favor it in some form or fashion. That's actually not a huge increase. I think it was more like 20% 8 years ago. And in 2016, when we had our demonstration at the federal building during Brexit week, and got all that media attention, it triggered a poll in the union leader. It was an unscientific poll, but I think we had 40% support for secession and 60% opposition, roughly.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the next one of those polls that comes out says.
Right. because it really, this is, again, we're still not, the country is not in secession mode yet. This is still a situation where the federal government actually has not behaved in a particularly centralized mode for the last few years. It's, partly just because Trump is so hated, there's been a little bit of decentralization of power. Trump has his power and had his power, and then the Federal Reserve had their power, the CIA had their power, and the Congress had their power. And there was some split, in the power, and so that it wasn't too centralized. But now it's going to re-centralize over a 4-year period, probably.
Yeah.
And there's no gridlock to speak of. Not at the federal level. There's some gridlock probably between the feds and the states. And again, it's going to be a question of how far the federal government overplays its hand, right? And if they're cautious, I don't think there will be any secessions. And there would still be a united Yugoslavia today if it weren't for the fact that there's happened to be a government in the central government that was not cautious, right? It was reckless. And when the central government in Belgrade behaved that way, that's what created secession. There was like a last resort. They're like, well, we don't really know if we want to do this or not, but we guess we better, because we're, at least we'll have a chance,
Yeah, it's like I wonder what now that people are settling in that Biden's president, will places like California and stuff still be thinking they want to leave, or will they stop?
Yeah, of course, that's the traditional release valve in the United States, is that as pressure builds up, it results in changes, and usually the change comes in the form of an election and also in party platforms. And as long as that release valve is still functioning, it's kind of harder to have secession. But we don't actually know. We don't know if the release valve is still functioning. We could look back 10 years from now and say, wait a minute, why have Democrats been in power for 10 years? How did that work exactly? People start wondering if the elections are free and fair. They're already wondering in large numbers. This is becoming a really mainstream issue to some extent. Ed Nale at the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, used to rail about this in 2004 on his radio show, and the Republicans were constantly complaining about voter fraud, and it just didn't become mainstream until Trump started talking about it, and it became a little bit more mainstream. But if you start seeing really suspicious numbers, I'm pretty suspicious that the Democrats took the entire federal government, right? That just doesn't, I wouldn't have expected that from this election. And if that keeps happening, so that release valve will stop functioning, right?
Yeah, because how many people are like me where we just, you're not relying on that process. Why is that the way we decide anything?
So we got to have
other sense to me.
We got to have other peaceable release valves. If the election release valve is not functioning, then we fall back on the or like the gridlock you release. Well, we don't, no gridlock, no release valve. You have a united government, and you don't have an obvious way to vote it out. Then you've got to have some other a peaceable release valve, and civil disobedience is one, and that will probably happen some, but the other release valve we need is secession. And it doesn't have to actually result in a secession, right? That's what I'm always saying. The release valve could just be in the form of stronger and stronger secession movements. Now people have something to put their energy in that's not violent. They can put their energy into their state's independence, and that will start growing like a balloon, and the feds will have a motive to keep that balloon from getting bigger. And the easiest way for them to do it is just to become a little bit more cautious and slow moving. That's probably all they'll need to do. But I don't know if they're smart enough to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to. I can't. I don't know what it's going to go. Which way it'll go on that. How will they react to this?
Yeah. It's funny too because I talk about Yugoslavia too much. When people hear the word, they become terrified, and they should be terrified. But
that place has been
happened.
different than us. That place has been different from us forever.
Well, no, actually, it's pretty similar.
Well, in what ways is it similar?
Well, it's complicated, but the point I'm trying to make is that England is even more similar. Canada is even more similar than England, and that's really probably where we should be looking and what we should be talking about when it comes to the way independence movements work these days in the West. The Quebec thing was pretty orderly. The Scotland thing is even more orderly. The Brexit thing is pretty orderly. That's really we should be aiming, and we should have our sights on that, and only be trying to avoid being like Yugoslavia.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. I guess you'd be referring to that one whenever you think about the worst case scenarios.
Yeah, that's the one to avoid. But again, even there, the secession stuff was still a positive development, right? It was still helpful in deterring Slobodan Milosevic. It basically cost him everything, including his life one day. So, if there had been no secession in Slovenia and Croatia, I think the situation would have been dramatically worse overall. Even Bosnia came out slightly better off with secession than I think it would have otherwise.
And when did that all start?
It depends on. I would say it started basically with the economic crisis that preceded the death of Tito, or I wouldn't call it an economic crisis at that point, but the underlying problems that preceded the death of Tito. When Tito died, this was followed by an economic crisis. So you had hyperinflation to some extent. Everybody was building houses because at least they thought, well, that's going to hold its value. So it looked like a building boom. But so it looked great, but it wasn't so great. And the economic crisis triggered a constitutional crisis where Yugoslavia was a pretty decentralized place. And Slobodan Milosevic, the ruler of Serbia, who had sort of ousted the mainstream communists, he was a nationalist communist, and he ousted those people, and he took power in Serbia and was trying to extend his power all the way through Yugoslavia, essentially. And he was trying to undermine the decentralized nature of Yugoslavia, and the source of his power was his nationalistic rhetoric, which made him a little bit like Trump in a lot of ways. And it really inflamed nationalist tensions around Yugoslavia, which was only 50 years past World War II and the ethnic atrocities that were large numbers of ethnic atrocities that were committed then. So and of course you look at the traditional mistreatment of Serbs in that area in World War II and World War I, especially, but also by the Turks and in the Balkan Wars, and there's all these different things. You had a nation in the form of Serbia which had a lot of traditional historical grievances and a lot of focus on the past, and that spewed a lot of fear in Serbs as these countries started to pull away from Yugoslavia. And anyway, I hope that answer your question.
Well, also, what I'm thinking is that they came from so much worse place. They had so many things that had gone wrong with World War II and communism and stuff that we're not coming from the same place as they are. I mean,
right.
They were starting out from such bad situation. Sort of,
yeah. But again, Yugoslavia was actually a fairly decent place to live, up until 1992, really. You had asked me where it started. Yeah, so that was
so I mean, it's because it's after the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, it's after '89.
Well, that's the other thing that triggered it. When communism fell, it created something of a power vacuum, And again, that was what nationalists were able to fill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just seems like, from '89 to when they're fighting with each other. I mean, we're not starting from nearly as bad a place.
Right.
Like you're saying, we have a lot more in common with Scotland wanting to split from England. I mean,
But
it's so much more similar.
that's going to change at some point in the United States when the debt bubble comes home to roost, right?
Yeah.
When the world stops using the dollar as the reserve currency, it's going to reduce the value of the dollar a great deal, and eventually we're going to have some serious inflation. I don't know how it's going to come about, or if it might be preceded by deflation for a while. When it happens, I understand it happens very fast, and they're going to react by making the situation worse. They'll ban Bitcoin transactions, maybe, or they'll make other currencies illegal so that it's currency trafficking to use Swiss francs, and they'll probably do all these kinds of things or many of the kinds of things that Venezuela did, and just make the situation last for 10 years when it could have been over in 1 year.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, so what have you been doing, spreading the word lately? I think I've seen your activities change a little bit.
So I have uploaded to the Ridley Report all of the editions of the NHexit podcast, and that's not as meaningful as it used to be, because in the old days, the Ridley Report got a normal number of hits, and everything was just kind of normal. But over the years, every once in a while, YouTube just comes in and shadow bans me by drastically reducing the number of people that can see my videos.
Yeah, and suddenly
an NHexit podcast, if I had uploaded it in 2018, would have achieved probably about 700 hits. And if I'd uploaded it in 2012, it would have achieved probably 1,200 hits. But now I'm uploading your podcasts and they're only achieving about 80 hits. So I upload to BitChute and a lot of other places. I do other things to promote, but ultimately there's just no way I can get the kind of audience that I used to, because I'm gradually being erased.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from people finding you on YouTube by accident or getting promoted. And
yeah, and what's really interesting is that whenever I upload a video, especially a good one, like a confrontation with a cop or something like that, you'll see, within 30 minutes of it being uploaded, it will have 60 or 70 hits over just this very short period of time. 2 hours later, it'll have 200 hits, and then it'll just sort of stop, like something artificial happened to keep people from seeing it.
Yeah, things have been different. Yeah, so you're having to find different outlets. We're going to have to find different outlets. So I'm still digging up a few more people. I've tried to record with Caleb 3 or 4 times, so that'll happen pretty soon. We keep missing each other, and I'm setting up a couple more. And if people want to contact me and set up a time, the way it works is you tell me when's a good time, and I will try to work around that. And then also some people I can do email interviews if we can never connect this way. And then I am making plans for Pork Fest, which is June 21st to the 27th. They changed the dates. They moved it up a week. And so I'm wanting to talk to everybody possible with what we can build up. Can we get ourselves a place or a building, or can we build ourselves tents and things like that? I'm hoping to have something where we could have our New Hampshire consulate there, and we can talk to people.
Yeah, that would be just fun, just to have a sign that says that. And
open 9 to 5 consulate hours.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind, I guess, June 21st through July 4th would be the period where there are a lot of Free Stater activities, because there is
no, they moved it to the 21st to the 27th.
Fork Fest has been moved.
Yeah,
and in addition, Pork Fest and Fork Fest have both been moved.
No, I don't know anything about Fork Fest.
Okay, so Fork Fest, according to their website, as of 5 days ago, Fork Fest was still ending on July 4th. So
Yeah,
they moved it, but it never.
I don't think that happened. I don't think that's true.
Oh, okay, all right. Well,
They
I
don't.
guess
They
we'll
don't
know.
know that Pork Fest moved recently,
Huh.
and
Okay.
Pork Fest changed their time, and then even when you went to their website like 3 days ago, it was wrong.
Huh.
So, but I'm talking to the guys that are running it, and it's the 21st to the 27th. So that's when I'm planning on being there because
Are you talking about Are you talking about Porcupine Festival or Fork
yes,
Festival?
yeah, Porcupine Festival.
No, there's two. Are you talking about Fork Fest or Porcupine Festival?
Well, I'm talking about the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I'm at their
Okay.
website right now.
Okay.
Uh,
I'm talking about Fork Fest. It's supposed to run till July 4th.
I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Fork
I
Fest
think
with an F is
yes,
not running when it says it's running.
yeah, because they were running it concurrent with Pork Fest, and Pork Fest
Hmm.
changed their mind a week ago
Okay.
and didn't change it everywhere. So
All right.
most people are running behind. So this is my way of telling people when the right time is, the 21st to the 27th. And
Okay.
I'm trying to get the Fork Fest guys to figure that out
Okay.
on the
All right.
Shire Society forum and stuff like that. Yeah, everybody got messed up because for some reason they thought they should do it on the 4th of July, and that never works because there's already going to be 1,200 people there. So we would be a tiny minority and
Hmm.
crushed. So they
Well,
decided,
hopefully we could have more incidents where ladies from Connecticut report our people for carrying guns, and the police show up and then just scold the ladies from Connecticut.
we might need to secede from Connecticut. Or we're gonna have to have stronger border controls for the Karens from Connecticut.
Oh, speaking of the free staters, I have a piece of positive news, a couple pieces maybe, but something that you can do if you want to support an independence-friendly movement in New Hampshire without actually spending any money. I've been going to smile.amazon.com. When I
Mm-hmm.
shop on Amazon, I just go smile.amazon. Smile.amazon.com, and then I just type in Free State Project, and it sends part of my purchase to the Free State Project. Part of my expenditures go to the Free State Project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if anybody wants to support them, they can set that up.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm looking at the Fork Fest stuff. Yes, I would say all of this is old. They need to change it.
Okay.
So I need to talk to some of them and get enough people to realize what's going on. And then if they still want to do it that week, that's fine. But I don't think so.
A Free Stater also has been voted to the position of House Majority Leader in New Hampshire.
Aha.
You know Jason Osborne, right?
Yes. Is that what's happening right now? I thought it was somebody else.
I don't think so. I think it's Osborne, and I think he's attained a pretty high position. And of course, I think we're going to have probably some pretty positive developments at the State House over the next 2 years, because it's a sea of red in there. The governor, the House, the Senate. I don't remember what the Supreme Court's composition is, but it's just as red as the feds are blue right now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is, of course, there's a lot of bad Republicans, but Free Staters tend to fare better. Free Staters, libertarians who moved to New Hampshire for more freedom, basically. Free Staters tend to fare better during Republican years. More of them run as Republicans because they don't get quite as mistreated by Republicans as they do by Democrats. And so I guess I heard that 30 Free Staters were elected this year to the House. And that's just, the libertarians who moved to New Hampshire for more freedom as part of the Free State Project, right? It doesn't count normal libertarians who get elected in the Republican and Democrat parties.
Yeah, so it's saying Jason Osborne is the majority leader. I'm just looking it up here.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
There was a situation in 2011 similar to this. I think we had more like, 15 or 16 free staters in the House back then. But the Republicans did attain all the branches except for the governor and the Supreme Court, I think. And that resulted in that 2-year period, there was an 11% reduction in the government.
Well, and then we'll have to have somebody propose a secession amongst those people, not named Ridley.
Wait, run that by me again?
We'll have to have somebody propose secession, but his name will not be Dave Ridley.
Oh, well, I'm proposing secession. What I'm proposing is that the resolution should, that there should be a reimbursement for taxpayers. The resolution should not cost any taxpayer dollars. That's my only.
You know how they have a bill in the New Hampshire House that tells you the economic impact of it. So I can propose that the economic impact of secession will be that we will get 20% of our income back. So it'll be a net positive.
Well, ends don't
that's how the math will come out.
Yeah, ends don't justify means. And a Democrat actually called me out on this. A Democrat friend of mine named Chaz Prohl, who this would have been.
But once you're talking that way, then we should be voluntarists who do not interact with the government and do everything separate from them.
That's one way to do it. But I'm okay with pretty much anything where you're not triggering taxpayer expense. Does that make sense?
But see, you can trigger taxpayer expense by doing anything.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, it's not like, see, that's the thing that would go back to what you said before. I am not liable for what my enemies are doing. That they might overreact, they might do some crazy thing. That doesn't, that they spend thousands of dollars fighting us. That's not our fault.
But Chaz was right when he called me out in 2006 era. I requested 2 bills, and it was easy to get, reps that would support this stuff. So 2 bills came before the New Hampshire State House because of me, right? A pro-gun bill and what was the other one? An anti-licensing bill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And later on, Chaz called me out on that, and he said, you probably cost taxpayers, about $4,000 by having these 2 bills heard. And in response to that, I said, you're right. I'm not going to request any more bills unless I can reimburse the taxpayers for the expense. And I think that was an appropriate reaction to Chaz.
But it also feels like these guys spend millions of dollars on stuff and then pretend that we are wasting thousands.
Yeah, now there are cases where that happens. All I can control is my own actions.
I mean, everything you do would be eventually costing them less money. And that
we could hope so.
Right
yeah, if a bill passes and all these hoops get jumped through, then it's conceivable that it could end up saving taxpayer dollars. But it's difficult to even get the bill passed.
Mm-hmm. But that's happening all the time. It's just a constant thing right now. Mm-hmm. It's already happening. I propose getting rid of all the different parts of the New Hampshire government. So there, we've saved 100%.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So there we are. Yeah. I mean, if somebody wants to nickel and dime me, okay, let's shut down the whole thing let's shut it all down and then start from scratch.
Yeah, well, got to be the change. Gandhi said, got to be the change you want to see in the world.
Well, see, then you could just not propose the things, but if they're going to meet, I'm proposing that they shut the doors right now and never reopen. There we go.
Yeah.
I don't want them to spend any money.
All I can do is make sure that I'm not making them hear more bills unless I'm reimbursing taxpayers for the expense. Yeah.
Well, I can't imagine that there's new expenses. I mean, they do things electronically. They can figure, and they're meeting in parking lots. So, you could. All right. Well, I think we've covered all the different things. Can you think of something else we didn't do?
If I can think of something, we can bring it up in the next podcast that we talk.
All right.
Oh, one other thing. I may forget to mention this, so I should say it now. I did listen to your, I don't know if you were on the call, but I started listening to the Liberty Block that you were telling me about, where I guess one of the NHexit guys is on this podcast, on a different podcast, Elliot Axelman, and I guess they were interviewing the Texas secessionist leader or one of their leaders. I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah, the guy, he's Richard Dennis, maybe like that. Let me look at it.
Okay,
because it's the Texas National Movement.
Texas Nationalist Movement, yeah. And listening to that guy, that really opened my eyes to how close we are to the Union breaking up. When that guy described in his sort of laid back, unassuming manner just some of the details of what they've already accomplished and how many folks they've got on board with this, it sounds like they're way ahead of us, and it sounds like they're deep inside the political process, setting it up, and that's before the economic collapse. That's before Joe Biden, commits a massacre or something like that. All these things that haven't happened yet that are going to happen probably as the united government overplays its hand. When those things happen, it seems to me actually somewhat likely that Texas will secede. And I'm skeptical, right? I knew some of the Republic of Texas people back in the 90s, and I did not like them at all. And I thought they were just completely exaggerating what they could accomplish. And I think I know how to spot people who are exaggerating. I do not think this guy was exaggerating. They're close.
Well, I liked everything he said in that thing, which you can find from our website, the link to that. They also talked to California people about a week ago on the Liberty Block. But yes, I like that Texas National Movement guy. But you realize, Ridley, their next thing they're doing is having somebody propose the legislation to have a vote.
Well, and that's kind of great. I hope that they reimburse taxpayers for the expense.
I don't think so. I don't think so, my friend. But yeah, I liked everything. Maybe I can get him on here sometime, and all I'll do is throw him softball questions and not say that it'll never happen like he did on that show. There's always one person that tells them that why are we even talking about this? It'll never happen.
Well, that guy reeked of credibility, and he reeked of progress. So I think we, like I said, I put the chances at 15% that New Hampshire is independent within 3 years.
Yeah, because they've been working on this for 10, 20 years.
Yeah,
that particular group.
I mean, like I said, once Texas goes, it will mainstream the concept, and mainly what will happen is, whenever the first country tries, or the first state tries to secede, the feds will overreact, and that's what will trigger the exodus.
Yeah, how people react to that. Yeah,
I mean, I think that's a reasonable scenario. I don't know what will happen, but I think that's reasonable to expect.
Yep. Well, is that it for this time?
I think so.
Yeah, and definitely people can find that interview on any of the social media places and at nhexit.org.
Oh, you posted the Liberty Block interview?
Yeah, and then you did it. So I think it's been posted 3 times.
Just Google Google the Liberty Block, and you'll find other content in addition to what we have on nhexit.org.
Yeah.
No, it's so frustrating. I feel like we have, I've been finding some great content to listen to over there. I feel like we're producing something that people would enjoy listening to if they know it's there. But we are hidden. Our light is hidden under a federal bushel. The feds and their allies have just crushed the ability to spread information to a large extent.
I also think hopefully there's a few more people looking because they realize they have to, not relying on the same sources they used to. Because we're having
they're looking, but when I watch my YouTube channel, I see they are not finding.
Well, yeah, you're not on YouTube. It has to be.
Well,
other places.
I'm sort of not. I'm on BitChute, and my BitChute channel now gets, I think, more hits per video than my YouTube channel, and so hopefully that will continue to increase.
Yeah, there's just. I mean, I have people I'm losing on social media all the time. They're all going other places. They're all searching. You know. It's just the way it is. They having to, we're having to search, so people have to find it, and then but yeah, it's going to be starting slow. It's nothing's easy with them doing it. And what if they do more?
Well, actually, a Democrat suggested to me, a relatively friendly Democrat suggested, you ought to consider making an email list. Just and I've been also going back to the processes that we used in the 2007 era, or more like 2005, before YouTube was really a thing. I'm finding that I'm posting information on web forums a lot. So, we can step backwards, we can make an orderly retreat, and I think at some point later on, something will come smashing through that the feds can't stop. So, like a decentralized media platform or something like that. And I think that's what will be our liberation.
Yeah, something else is gonna change. But starting an email list for NHexit would make sense.
Yeah.
If somebody else doesn't do it, we'll figure it out.
I think I'm going to start working on it. I mean, I already have an old email list that I can start, an old email list that I can start from.
Yeah, and then just start up from there. That way, people can get things that way. Just
all of this stuff, we knew most of these things were going to happen in some form or fashion at some point in time, and hopefully we were all psychologically prepared for it. And it's just, things are just playing out the way one would have expected if one were making predictions in 2010.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for some people it seemed big, but we've all been talking about how they're going to be blocking our stuff, and that we knew this stuff was going to happen.
Yep. Or at least we thought it would. We've had a good run. We've made good progress with the openness that we had for a while, and we're going to get it back.
Yeah, we'll have to. It'll just be different.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is good. We'll catch up. Maybe we won't even have to wait a week, and then we'll crank up a new pile of stuff.
Yeah, as you can see, the news doesn't take long to pile up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good talking to you, Dave.
Okay. Thanks, Russell. I really appreciate what you're doing with this.
All right. Talk to you again soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
I don't like Freedom Radio Talk. Listening to LRN FM makes me balk. Far from it, I should probably walk. LRN.FM. Feds don't want you to hear them.